Hagen, really glad you're here. Grateful to have a chance to be with you, both those of you in the room, those of you joining online. Thanks for being a part of our time together. I love the events around the Christmas story. I love the events. I love the uniqueness, the combination of people involved, and the events around Jesus' birth. It's such a unique combination of people that factor in. And I think about the Christmas story. One of the things I love is that it is full of questions. There's questions by people in the story. Mary had questions. We just heard and read some of those together. Joseph later will have questions. Shepherds will have question. Wise men will have question. There's a king that's pretty threatened by Jesus' birth. He will have questions. There's questions everywhere. And I think I'm intrigued by that because I love the sheer simple dynamic of questions. Questions really might be one of our most significant currencies and most underused currencies of the day, right? Questions can gain us a lot. Questions can kind of be an expression of our curiosity. Questions help us get to know people. Questions help us gain understanding. And if you think about life, and I kind of think about my life, and some of my earliest memories are questions. Right? It's like, how was I going to figure something out? How was something going to go? What could I anticipate? I remember being really young, and in this neighborhood that I grew up in, I remember when the first kid in the neighborhood got an Atari, which for some of you, that's already like dating me. Just give me a chance to redeem myself here, okay? But like when the first kid in the neighborhood got an Atari, and his name was Ryan, I mean, because just not everybody had an Atari. Not everybody had like some video gaming system. Well, when Ryan first got the Atari, we just started ending up at Ryan's house all the time. And the more we played this Atari, the more this one particular question grew in me. And it was a question that had some angst. It was some question that probably pointed to how internally competitive I really was, even at a young age, with myself, how badly I wanted to like accomplish and move on. And the driving question, every time we went to Ryan's, and then when we left Ryan's after playing with the Atari, the driving question for me was, am I ever really going to be able to fully conquer Frogger? Okay, you laugh. Some of you must remember Frogger. You're okay, remember? Like, this is mind-boggling to me, but back when that first came out, over 4 million copies of Frogger were sold. That was crazy because, again, not everybody had, like, an Atari in their house. And I wanted to know, was I going to be able to improve and climb levels of getting that dumb frog across the road? That question drove me for a while. As I got a little bit older, even into adulthood, I've never been like a big gamer of any kind, and so occasionally a friend would invite me to their house so that I could play some type of game with them. And generally, they were smart enough. They're like, "Hey, come and we'll play a particular sports game, like we'll bowl or we'll play baseball, play tennis, whatever." I'm like, and that's the intrigue for me. But it seemed like it never failed that when I would get to somebody's house, because they had invited me to play this video game of sorts with them, that they were always wrestling with the question of, hey, where's that other controller? I lost my other controller, which I tend to think for some of my friends, that was a little bit of a ploy to just have me come watch them play a game for a while. It's like, how hard is it, kid, for you to like keep track of this controller? These questions, like they were just there. They were real questions. And while on some level, maybe like those don't feel like much. Those questions are like, okay, those are kid questions, and that's great. As I got a little bit older, I remember when I really started to ask a question in middle school. I had this experience, this middle school that I attended that is now an elementary school, which just is yet another thing that dates me in the first few minutes of us being together. And I remember going through this period when I was in middle school where for some reason I was really nervous all the time. And we weren't using words like anxiety. We weren't describing things the same way, but like I was really nervous. And like even started to have like these like weird physical reactions, and I would itch really bad because I was nervous. And I had like good people around me, like supportive family, and my mom introduced me to counseling at that time. And I talk about counseling all the time. It's still a really significant part of my life and a helpful part of my life. And my friends were fairly understanding. I remember people at my church praying for me, but me living for a while with this question of why am I so nervous? That was the only vocab I had at the time. Why am I so nervous? Why do I feel like this? Why am I thinking like this? Why am I responding like this? I've talked before a little bit about how now even in adulthood, a handful of years ago, having these experiences, these encounters with what felt at times like debilitating anxiety. And wrestling with the question of like, why is that happening? What's off? What's off mentally or emotionally or physically or spiritually? Like what in this complex being that we all are, like what's like off a couple degrees? How will I function? How do I like move in this environment? How do I do daily things? Like just these questions, and they became pressing. So there's questions of, like as simple as how do I, get better at Frogger? There's questions that carry more weight, right? Like how do I navigate this challenge? One of the other questions that I've wrestled with more in adulthood, and at times I think it's funny, and at times I think it's really frustrating, but I've really wrestled with, as an adult, will I ever succeed at actually correctly putting together anything that we buy at IKEA? Anything. And that's not like my invitation for you to invite me to like a handy person party. I'm not interested. And sometimes I laugh, and other times I think nobody should go there. And so when we go there, and a couple years ago, and we got carts going up and down the aisle at IKEA, and we're like, our girls are getting ready for college, everything that goes in the cart, I'm like, I'm useless. I got nothing. So it's either my wife Erica or it's one of the girls. You're going to have to figure that out, right? So it's the lingering question. Another question that I didn't really start thinking about, I didn't even know it was a question that I was asking until I was in my mid-30s, which was last year. But I didn't realize that, I was wrestling with this question of who can I trust to stay? Who can I trust to stay? Again, I've talked lots before about my dad left my mom and I when I was around 1, and again, really supportive and consistent family other than him, like really like consistent anchored people, but I didn't even realize that I was internally on some levels wrestling with this question of, but what does that exit mean, and how does that exit impact ways I think and process and respond and trust or don't trust? So you have this question, this lingering question of who can I trust to stay, and friend groups and environments and in support places and just in fun groups of people, like who can I trust to stay? It's this lingering question that again, I didn't even know I was asking, but I was asking. Questions they range all over the place. And I think we see some of that in these events of the Christmas story, these events of these people around the birth of Jesus. Like think about Mary. We just listened to some of Mary's story, right? We think about Mary, and we think about this young lady and her encounter with this angel. And of course, she has questions like, how's any of this even going to happen? Like, what can you possibly be talking about? But what about the questions that would just be natural questions that maybe aren't written on the page? Like, what about Mary asking things like, hey, what does this mean, not just for me, but what does this mean in my small community? What does this mean for the other women around me as in a culture where women's opinion wasn't valued and the voice of a woman didn't have credibility and wasn't trusted and given significance? And yet, here's the God of all creation making Mary the first person he includes in the actual coming of the events of the birth of Jesus. And it's funny because Jesus does something like that again, like 33 years later at his resurrection. The first people he appears to as the resurrected Jesus is two women who had gone to his grave to do some ceremonial things the Jewish people would have done. And he entrusts them first with his story. Nobody building a case for themselves in the first century in a Jewish culture would have entrusted the story first to women. He's like breaking these boxes. And is it possible that Mary wrestles with what does it mean for me to be trusted by Jesus, to like carry part of his message that's really like breaking a little bit of a cultural norm here? What does Mary think about when it comes to like, how do I talk to my family about this? How do I explain this? What does Mary ask about how Joseph might respond? What does Mary ask about what's it like to be a mom before I was planning to be a mom? Like what are all the like just questions that Mary might have asked? Not just in the moment, but over the course of the next 9 months. How about Joseph? There are probably lots of them the same for Joseph, right? First is what am I going to do? What do I do with what do I do with Mary? What do I do with this? I have all of these, like, again, I have these cultural and legal opportunities to create a lot of space between me and Mary, even make sure she's punished for what appears to Joseph to be some lapse. Does Joseph wrestle with how does he explain it to his family? What does this mean for him and Mary? At what point does Joseph start to wrestle with the fact that, okay, I'm going to have one perfect child and I'm going to have a bunch of other children that are not? You think your parenting's hard. Like, oh, that's a tension. Like, what in the world are we doing with that? What do Mary and Joseph, what questions do they ask when they're traveling to Bethlehem where Jesus actually ends up being born? What questions do they ask when they're fleeing? Because there is a king that's threatened by Jesus' birth. There's a king that's threatened enough and paranoid enough that he actually would end up killing his own son too, but he's like paranoid by somebody like Jesus born and somebody's calling him a king. And so here it goes, like Mary and Joseph with this really young boy, Jesus, and they've got to flee the country. And what questions are you asking about? Will we ever get to come back? Who will we see again? Who will we not see again? What does this mean for our future? What does this mean for his future? All sorts of questions. I think about the shepherds, who to me are some of the most intriguing people in the story because they're just doing their job. Like, they've been hired to tend sheep and they're tending sheep in the night, and these angels come to them. These angels come to them and say, hey, I would need to interrupt your work shift here. I need to interrupt and I got to let you know there's like this really good news that God has sent us to share with you. And the good news is that there's a Savior that's born to you. Like you know your missteps, you know your selfishness, like because everybody's got selfishness. Like that wasn't unique to the shepherds, and so he's like, there's a Savior that's been born. This is really good news, and I want you to go see this Savior and this King that's been born for people like you. And here again, the shepherds, it's a little bit like Mary. It's like an overlooked group of people. It was nobody's dream to be a shepherd. It was nobody's hope for the next generation. It's like these overlooked group of people, and yet here come these angels. Say, hey, like this is for you. Like this is really good news for you. And what do the shepherds think? I mean, do the shepherds wonder, like, am I seeing this right? Am I hearing this right? Are there really angels in the sky? Like, because if I leave these sheep, I've probably lost my job. Do they think, is there a risk in going? Is this a setup? Is this a plot? What do they really think? Do they think, what do we actually have that's actually worth taking to a king that's been born? Like, what would we actually take? What do we actually like bring? Do we just bring us? Like, is that what we're bringing? Like, imagine the questions that happen around these people. And here's part of why I love questions and I love these people. So I think about, if you think about Mary and Joseph and shepherds and all the other people that are engaged in this crazy series of events with Jesus being born. And they've got at least one common question. And it's actually a question that you and I share. It's our shared question. It's a question that was common to them. It's common to us. And We probably try and express it in different vocabularies and slightly different words, but there's this question. And the question that Mary had to ask on some level is the same question that Joseph had to ask on some level. It's the same question that the shepherds had to ask on some level. And it's the question that you and I, in some way, shape, or form, and all of humanity, on some point in time, we ask this question. Consciously or subconsciously, we ask this question. Is he worthy? Is Jesus worthy? Like, is Jesus worthy of my trust? Is Jesus worthy of my trust and his love and my devotion to him? Is Jesus worthy to be followed? Is Jesus worthy of being the leader? If Jesus really came like as this perfected expression of sacrificial, self-giving love, is he worthy? Not is he worthy of my occasional glance or a polite nod, but is he actually worthy of my trust? Is he worthy of me being in awe of? Is he worthy of me counting on? Is he worthy of me going to? Is he worthy of me surrendering to him? Is he worthy of me asking my questions that I still have? Is he worthy of my candor and my honesty and my rawness and my doubt? Is he worthy of my pain and my frustration? Is he worthy? Like, that's, in some ways, that's a timeless question. Mary had to ask it. Mary had to ask it. Joseph had to ask it. Like, is this Jesus? Is he really going to be worth this? Is he worthy? Is he worthy of this kind of trust? Is he worthy of not just like a label of a king, but is he worthy of being my king? Is he worthy? Is he worthy of my trust in his forgiveness and his grace and his dream, his passion for me? Is he worthy? And as we rally around the events of Christmas, as we rally around the events of Jesus' birth, I want to invite you just to ask that question. Like, for you, is Jesus worthy? Is he worthy of your life? Is he worthy of more than like some traditional events? Is he worthy of more than some family gatherings? Is he worthy of more than a space occupied in a church around his birthday? Like, is he worthy to be trusted, to be loved back? In all of his faithfulness, is he worthy? And so as you think about it, and maybe you think about some of the biggest questions in your life right now, about the future or about fulfillment or about your relationships or about your hopes or where it feels like hope is lacking. Maybe just you tuck those questions in together with this overarching question of is he worthy? Is he worthy?